possibly could. I got onto Facebook, got onto YouTube, told everybody to subscribe, tell everybody to say follows, tell everybody to push the ding button, and then people will know that here I am. So yes, you should be here, prepared, feet up. You should have some kind of slippers on. Get a dog. The dog will find your slippers, bring them to you. Hopefully you're wearing some underpants. So hopefully you got popcorn, some kind of beverage. You're watching the show. This is God's Comic, Brad Stine. And yes, this is Monday night, 7 o'clock Central Time, coming from Nashville, Tennessee, with my sidekick, my son, Wyatt Leroy Stine. And we're just getting started. So, if you're on for the first time, it's a real simple show. It's called Brad Stine Has Issues, and it comes with its very own theme song that you can buy for 15 cents or just listen to it for free, like this. Shoot. Hey guys, it's God's Comic, Brad Stine, and this is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. I don't know if there's a lot of clarity, White, but I can guarantee you there'll be a cacophony. Son, how are you?
I was doing good until I tried to start the stream today.
Okay, and then what happened?
Okay, so normally when you press the button to start streaming, Facebook will start streaming.
Right.
But today, it decided to do something different and say it's trying to start.
Okay.
But it's not starting.
Has it started?
No, it's still trying to start itself.
So are we not on live
We
yet?
are on YouTube.
We're on YouTube.
Just not on Facebook, because Facebook decided they didn't want to play ball.
They're being mean. Okay.
They are being so mean. So in a few minutes, hopefully, it'll connect. But for now, entertain our YouTube audience.
We certainly will. You know, we don't get spend enough time with our YouTube audience.
Oh, we have a comment on YouTube.
What does it say?
Greetings from Floral City.
Floral City?
Yeah, I guess that's where flowers come from.
Oh, yes. Who is it?
Paul Avachi.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, I am so grateful that you're here. I'm grateful to hear that you are part of our experience. You know, YouTube is a very crucial element of the Brad Stine Has Issues podcast because some folks jump on there, and here we sit. We're giving you your special show, and I got something special coming up here soon. On August 31st, we are going to have a national release of my classic album, Put a Helmet On. And it's going to be shown live for free on YouTube on August 31st, and it's going to be kind of a watch party. I'm really just giving it to you as a free show to those who've never seen the full show. Also, it's to get subscribers, for you to share, get along with a bunch of friends, get some popcorn, get some, I don't know why I always say popcorn. Why do you think people even eat popcorn anymore? What do you think?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because, like, movie theaters aren't really popular anymore.
No, nobody's watching movie theaters anymore. And why would they? All they have is movies, and it's like, what, $59 to go see a movie now?
Something. It's not like the movie is any good anymore.
I know. Well, listen, I did find my page, but guess what?
Yeah.
We're not there.
Yeah, I know. I literally pressed the button. It said, "You're good," and I wasn't good.
Nothing worse than feeling good and you're not.
Yeah, and the best part is I couldn't have anticipated this, nor could I have fixed it, because this is the thing that we do to start the podcast. If the podcast button breaks, I can't fix that, Facebook. Do your job.
Yeah. I don't think Facebook really gives a crap about you and me, Wyatt. I don't think they're paying attention. I don't think there's some kind of Facebook monitor group out there somewhere watching, in some devious offshore account watching, saying, I wonder if Stine's trying to get back on.
No. You said they're not paying attention to us, and in your case, they're not paying.
Yeah. They're not really doing nada. But you know what? That's up to them. I'm not a big star in their opinion, but YouTube's with us. Anybody else saying hi to us?
Yeah, tons of them.
Who?
Okay, you do realize you can go on the YouTube app.
I don't know how to do anything, son. I am techno-inept. Son.
My boy, you made the YouTube page.
It's a condition. I am techno-inept.
What's it called, Gen X?
Wow. Oh, I'm much older than Gen X.
To be fair, I don't really know what all the gen stuff means. I just picked one at random.
Do you know what a gender is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you identify with a particular gender?
Yes.
Which one?
The first one.
The one that came first.
Sure.
Well, when God invented Adam and Eve, who did he invent first? Adam or Eve?
No, hold on. I used to know this once. Hold on. Bob.
No! Adam, because if he had invented Eve first, she wouldn't have stopped talking and he would never got around to getting Adam because she wouldn't shut up.
The clue was in the name.
Yes! It was implied in the first name given to the first man, Adam.
Well, how was I supposed to make that connection?
Sunday school.
Oh. You know what? I don't think I paid much attention in Sunday school because I heard the word school and then lost interest.
Are you interested in Sundays?
Oh, definitely, yeah, because there's no school.
Yeah. And they taste good.
Well, some of them.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Other times they're misspelled and then they're really dry.
Yes. Listen, I got to ask you something. Did you see that in Hawaii they had horrible fire?
Oh, yeah. None of the good stuff I like. This is the bad file.
This horror fire. What was it? Was it Lahaina? Yeah, Lahaina was just wiped out from the face of the earth. And, if you were on an island and the island caught on fire, what are your options?
Swim. You're on an island. There's water literally everywhere.
So you tread water indefinitely.
Listen, you don't tread water because treads are on tires, which are on cars, which don't float.
Okay. I see where you're going.
You should have do that thing where you float on your back like a buoy. Until eventually the seagulls come and pick you away.
Well, that sounds like a utopia, son, but that's not what these poor people suffered. It just blew up. But here's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yep.
So as soon as this happened, we had groups of people. I don't know if you know anybody. Do you know anybody in your life that, I don't know, what would you call them, a conspiracy theorist?
Oh, yeah. One of those? Yep, I've heard of them.
Okay. Well, somebody immediately said, listen, over the last few years, if there's one thing we have learned, it is that the government is not our friend. If there's one thing we have learned is that the World Economic Forum is real and does want to take over the world and control us. So when it comes to some devious megalomaniac, some lunatic oligarch, some evil, totalitarian, despotic, underground, underbelly controller of systems of finances and what's running the world. It's real. It's real. And they're out there and they're controlling stuff, controlling people. They control our president. They control many in Congress and Senate. I mean, it's legit. The amount of freedom we don't have and who's pulling strings. Evil people who, because they have money, get great joy in controlling human beings. I mean, these are sick people. Good news is when they die, they go to hell. That's good news. I hope they don't. I hope they accept Christ as their Savior. It's the only belief system in history where God became a human, proved it by showing up for real, didn't just make a myth about it, actually showed up, died, came back to life, said, now I've done the thing for you. So I want them, and God says, pray for your enemies, love your enemies, pray for those that despitefully use you. But for those who do evil and die doing evil, they deserve to be punished. That's what it's all about. But so I'm very much aware that evil is out there and that governments will do evil things to control or to get power or to achieve their goals, and they do not care about the common folks, and they do not care about us, and they want to weed us out. And of course these rich oligarchs believe that there's too much population, so they want us all to wipe ourselves out through vaccines and through not having food and this and that. But I noticed they never volunteer. They never volunteer to go first. But why would they? They're better than us. They're superior. They even get to decide who gets to live and die and who's worthy of existence. But that being said, they came out to say that there's like a death ray that was used to ignite the island. It wasn't like some guy used cigarette butt, which was the classic way to start a fire, just threw a cigarette butt. Oh, only you can prevent forest fires. Don't throw cigarette butts. You do, the whole thing goes down. Or a magnifying glass. Maybe you were having fun burning ants. That's what we used to do as kids. We'd take a magnifying glass, burn ants. That's how we were. We didn't understand that perhaps the ants weren't appreciative of that particular technique, but we were just 6-year-old boys, burn things with magnifying glasses. But no, they used a death ray, Wyatt, to ignite the island. Where did the death ray come from?
Space.
So was it a satellite? Was it a rocket? Was it some kind of I don't know, some kind of spy plane? What contained the death ray to drive it into our existence? Do you know?
Well, I'm not going to say that this is true or anything, but okay. I've heard on the grapevine.
Okay. Huh. Yeah.
Space laser.
Okay, so it came from space. Came from space. Is that what you're telling me?
Yep. Or as I like to call it, spacer.
Okay, spazer. Okay, spazer. Listen, just curious, is Facebook still basically not on?
Not only is Facebook still not on, now vMix is giving me errors saying it can't connect to it.
Okay. So what would you say would be the smartest move at this point?
Considering YouTube is still completely fine.
Yeah.
And I'm recording everything so we can always post it in post, I'd say just keep going.
Okay. Okay. So we're not going to get to say hi to everybody. We're not going to get to...
I mean, to be fair, is that necessarily a bad thing? Like, I understand saying hi to a few people, but we spend about 20 to 30 minutes of doing that. Doesn't this mean we get more time doing witty banter?
So I just want to ask you one question, and as you know,
yes.
I'm techno inept. We made that very clear at the start of the show. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that nobody's there's nobody can see this on Facebook? It's not even there?
No, it's not here because literally we cannot connect to Facebook,
okay.
Facebook right now.
Okay.
Facebook is outright refusing us.
Okay. So we'd have to start over.
No, that wouldn't do anything. It would literally just turn everything down for YouTube.
I see. Okay, okay. I just want to make sure, because I don't know. So YouTube, you get your own special show, and you deserve it. You all been showing up.
You have been neglected for too many
way
seasons.
Too long. Is there any way that you can get me onto YouTube so I can say hi to those folks?
Yeah, it's a revolutionary technique called opening the YouTube app. Here, I'll do it for you to show you.
Can you do that for me, son? So, folks, I'm trying to get on and say hi to you. I really am. Okay, now you will not, if you're new to the show, Wyatt will never be seen. He is a secret, undefiled sidekick who wants to only be known as a voice. All right, so Wyatt's looking through the YouTube-ish thing. There is none. So again, now here's the reason why this is going sideways, and you guys need to know this especially if you're new to the site. It's called Stine Has Issues for a reason, because it, excuse me, always has issues. Something always goes wrong. Why? Because it's the most important podcast on earth, and because of that, the devil doesn't want this to exist. So he's always throwing a monkey wrench somewhere. So as we speak, we can't even find the YouTube folks who found us and are saying hi to us. But we do have something else out here, Wyatt, and perhaps we should just cut to that chase. If you can't find it, that's okay. We're just going to have to not worry about it for this moment. I started a new segment last week, I wanted to explore certain topics, certain ideas that were interesting to me. Because as I said, you guys, excuse me, I said to you that I wanted a podcast that was not only interesting and hopefully entertaining, but also that would maybe inspire you and maybe give you some marching orders on to how to do things to defend free speech, to religious liberties, liberty in general. On this,
we'll have to do it in like post because
yeah.
I need your email address.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So nothing, and I mean nothing, is working tonight. It doesn't matter because we're going to continue to say hi. We're going to continue to speak, but I do want to show you a new episode of something I started last week, where I wanted to talk about something that's more serious. It's not funny. A lot of people come on for the first time, they've seen my comedy, think it's going to be all funny, and I try to have some fun, but there's too much at stake in this earth to not talk about important things. So I wanted to show you episode 2 of what I think is going to be a daily or a weekly segment, where we take just about 3 or 4 minutes to really unpack a particular perspective or point of view. And I like to call it Brad Stine's Truthache. So Wyatt, if you would, let him have it.
All right, time for episode 2 of Brad Stine's Truthache.
So, for those of you confused by why America is dying, and it is, right before your eyes, allow me to enlighten you. You see, in order for a free society to work, it must be governed by not only competent people, but mature and hopefully wise people. The Bible, which is the moral standard for the West, even says that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So, if you don't believe in God, not only are you unwise, you can't be wise. But that's another story for a whole nother time. But one thing that is essential for wisdom to be present is the one thing you can only get by being older: perspective. Perspective can only be achieved by having lived life, and thus to have the ability to observe various ideas throughout history and determine which actually worked in regards to human flourishing and which didn't. All great societies encouraged and utilized free speech. All totalitarian governments did not. In order for a totalitarian government to be able to function, it has to eliminate free speech and to control the language and thus the free agency and creativity of its citizenry. You see, during slavery in America, it was crucial that the owners of slaves controlled how much slaves could think and behave. I can't control you unless I take away your freedom to think for yourself and be able to analyze and implement your autonomy within culture. This is why it was crucial that slaves were forbidden to be able to read, write, and educate themselves. If I have complete control over you and stifle your access to wisdom by denying your access to other historical writings and philosophies, then I can create an automaton that simply accepts their lot in life and never pushes back in regards to their station in the cultural milieu. India, for example, has for millennia had a caste system that perpetuates control by creating a culture where your status in life is defined and immutable. They teach groups that you have a station in life you deserve, you cannot control or escape from, so simply accept it as your duty to adhere to it while alive. Do anything less is to buck up against karma, which is a system beyond you that controls reality. We now live in a nation where elite groups have given themselves a self-administered status they don't deserve and abusing it in order to keep slaves, or what conservatives would call fellow citizens, under their thumb, and thus be able to maintain their position in life by which you should simply accept as your destiny. To do anything less is to be ungrateful and disobedient to the nature of life. Who are these people? Well, they come in different political parties, wealth and status groups, and behavioral choices. They do reveal themselves if you simply observe how they control the narrative. For example, one way to define a neo-slave owner is to examine their tactics. All neo-slave owners in America, for example, always implement one necessary component: you are forbidden to criticize them, and you are forbidden to disagree with them. Since the narrative is now completely controlled by the left, it is apparent when you are on to something as being true simply by observing what you can't criticize. How do I know for a fact that elections have been stolen in this nation? Simple. Were you allowed to question it? If not, it's a foregone conclusion. They were. How do I know if the vaccines were a control device to demand obedience, irrespective of the injuries, deaths, and elimination of bodily autonomy in regards to your decision for if you wanted to participate or not? How? Because doctors that disagreed with what was happening were forbidden to dissent on social media, and also were and are being stripped of their licenses. Because they disagreed and were forbidden that right and eliminated from participation in the conversation, we can be assured they were right. Remember that the left never builds anything. They can only destroy. Remember that the left never persuades anyone to their side. They must implement violence, censorship, and elimination of your ability to participate in the conversation. This is proof that what you are espousing is almost certainly the truth. Nothing the left fears more than truth, because truth bypasses their power and reveals their intentions and formula of indoctrination. If you want to know what is actually happening on this earth, simply abide by this one simple technique. What are you forbidden to criticize? When you discover that, you will know where true north is, and especially what you must determine to fight and die for. You see, folks, America is dying. Fix it. Join the militia of the mind to help the peasants revolt and citizens draw a line in the sand. Make it very clear to the oligarchs, technocrats, and megalomaniacs. You have gone too far, and we will fight with our last breath to stop your despicable evil from destroying liberty in America. So that would be Truthache number 2. I hope that I'm going to be able to move further and further into talking about particular items and ideas and topics and concepts that I hope inspire, but also, like I said, find some way to inspire you to be able to start fighting back. You know, the militia of the mind, which is what I said was the congregation of Americans, people who identify as an American, coming together and fighting together, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that you're a community, trying to give each other tips, ideas, and thoughts, and backing them up and being able to stand for what you believe is true and liberty and freedom, which we're going to have to do. It's a peasant's revolt. It's what it means to be part of the mighty 10,000, that you are 10,000 people in this nation that said, we will fight, I will fight with you, you will fight with me. We are from different parts of this country, different parts of ethnicities, different parts of histories, different genders, different ages, but let's be Americans and fight for freedom. It's the only thing that we have left. And of course, we do have the most amount of people that believe in these ideas. D.C. has completely abandoned us. They certainly don't care if this country remains strong or exists. We know the left has nothing but the desire to dismantle this nation and become impoverish us, to make everybody equal, because they're Marxists, and that's demonic and it's evil and it's cancerous, and they're going to pay a horrible eternal price for this. But in the meantime, we're stuck fighting these lunatics, and I mean lunatics, people who cannot think squarely, who need a government to tell them how to live and how to act, because they're infantiles. Remember what I said, systemic narcissism is what's ruling D.C., it's what rules all Democrats, all leftists, is narcissism. Pure worship of self, feelings, ideas, and thoughts that you see, that you conjure up, that you interpret, and nobody else can be right, and you won't allow them to speak, because children speak. That's how they work. That's how children behave. Nobody gets to speak but me, or I'll throw a tantrum. And when you see them shut down conservative speakers in colleges, what do? They scream. They sit and scream like children. It's a mental disorder. It's a disease. It's a possession. It's a loss of humanity. It's subhuman. It's backwards. It's retrograde. It's deconstructed. It's destroying yourself. It's handing the shackles to someone above you and saying, please wrap this around me and walk me around like a slave and a dog because I don't worth it. And yet they think they're virtuous, so they're self-deluded. You can't be more deluded than to be self-deluded. You know, there's none so blind as he who will not see, not can't see, because people that can't see can go live productive lives. But those who choose not to see so they can feel safe and be protected by those who they have deemed stronger, more important than them, these people are the part of the unteachables. Like I said, the class system in India, where you had the untouchables, people who just by birth, as I mentioned, cannot get out of their system because they believe in karma. Oh, you did such evil things that you came back as this worst case scenario of a human, and you don't get touched, and you don't get a good job, and you don't get anything, and you're not worthy of it because you did evil things, and maybe next time you get a little bit better. That's the untouchables. The left is the unteachables. They cannot think. They cannot see. They have no philosophy background. They have no understanding of logic. As a matter of fact, logic is so intimidating to them that they now say it's racist. Everything's racist because it works, because of the buffoons and the fools, and they're mainly white leftists who call themselves racist. You're right, we're all racist. This self-flagellation and making them feel better about themselves. Why would you do that? Because they lost God. Once God's gone, as G.K. Chesterton said, when you get rid of God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. So they've replaced God with the worship of themselves, systemic narcissism. They've replaced God with the virtues of the Judeo-Christian God, justice, equality, but they destroy it and they pollute it by always giving it a dark, a destructive version of equality. Like they believe equality means everybody gets everything equal. That's not what it means. Equality means you're made in God's image. You get to start to enjoy the human experience the best you can, but you're going to start in different places, different difficulties, different challenges. They want equity, meaning everybody gets the same result. Of course, some people don't deserve the same result because they're lazy or they're not as talented. There's things I can't do. Why should I be given a pilot's license if I don't know how to fly a plane? Why should I be given a PhD if I didn't do the work? I don't deserve it.
Why should you have a YouTube channel if you can't open the app?
Right. Right, son. Why should I? For example, you do this. You're the producer of this show. You're the sidekick. And when you fail on a regular basis, you don't complain. You don't say, well, shoot, Dad, since I failed, you should fail too. You want me to plug along. Matter of fact, you'll even say, Dad, stretch. Just keep going. I'm going to try to find a way to plug this back in. I'm going to try to find a way to salvage this thing that I've destroyed. And I'm left holding the bag. But do I complain?
Yes. Isn't that not what you're doing right now?
Yes, but in an eloquent way.
Oh, well, I mean, as long as it's elegant, you know.
So let me ask you this. So when you're not doing this, and you do school online,
yeah.
Lord knows that. For those who don't know, my son does school online. He wants to learn how to do macrame. He wants to bring back macrame as an art form. So he's learning how to...
Aren't those like candy hamburger-looking things in France? Like the multicolored ones?
Candied hamburgers in France?
Oh, no. They look like tiny hamburgers, and they're like multicolored. They were desserts. I think they're from France. Macron.
Oh.
Macrons.
Okay.
That's not what you said.
No, I said
that
macrame.
is not even remotely close. But the fact that...
No, it is remotely close because it got macra in it. That's close.
Well, apparently you don't know what they are, so how would you
I don't know what I've never eaten a multicolored hamburger. Thank you very much.
Okay,
but
audience, right now, YouTube audience, am I insane or is he insane? Are Macrons an actual thing?
And more importantly, are they multicolored hamburgers?
You know what? No. I'm looking this up.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. So you still work, and for those who don't know or are new to the show, my son works at Lowe's part-time because they refuse to hire him full-time because he always loses the tools, and that bothers them tremendously because it's a tool place. They sell tools, and to lose the tools regularly, it bothers them. They even gave him a tool belt of his very own tool belt. It said Wyatt right in the back. It was engraved with some kind of hot iron that they sell on, which aisle do they sell the hot irons?
Oh, no, that's a Home Depot exclusive.
Oh, dang it. Well, anyways.
Kind of ironic, actually.
Yes, I'll say. So you don't have those burners that burn into leather?
We do. Unfortunately, I owe 8 out of 16.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of people were getting burns. So we decided now employees do it for you.
What do they burn it into? Like, you mean people come in and say, can you burn something into this leather for me?
No. But if we did, yes, we would basically do whatever you want.
Okay.
There would be rules. There would be regulations.
Okay.
And we would not care.
No.
At all for them.
No. Well, how has Lowe's been treating you lately, though? Now that we've gone back to school, the part-time workers are gone, so now you have a chance. Everything's still running smooth like a well-oiled...
So I thought everything was as bad as it can get.
Yeah?
I thought there was absolutely nothing even close to as bad as Lowe's birthday party.
Right. How does it get worse than that? It's disgraceful.
Oh, I'll tell you. I was in the training room doing some email checking, and they were doing an orientation for some new hires we have. And I'm not paying attention because I've already done that stuff. But for some reason that I don't know, I turned to look just to see what they were on. And they're promoting all the stuff that Lowe's has done. Like, oh, look at us. We're an amazing company. Everyone says we're great. And then the next scene is their promotion for something that they call a night of low-mance. It was the one thing worse than a Lowe's birthday, Lowe's date night. Yeah.
Would it be too much to say they have sunk to a new Lowe's?
Yes. It would definitely be too much to say that, but you should do it anyway, because they deserve to know that.
What? May I be as bold as to ask, what exactly does the Lowe's date night entail? What?
You build birdhouses. What do you think you do?
You once told me that Lowe's appeared to be struggling. I think I might know why.
Finally, you're getting with the times. So yeah, that was interesting to say the least. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still not entirely convinced that wasn't some sawdust fumes enabled fever dream.
Why could it be that it was a prank that they did to all the Lowe's employees that come in, and they have that going in there? It's a hidden camera show, and they're actually pranking you to see what the kid when the guy looks over and goes, "What? Lowe's romance?"
Well, yeah, except the plot twist is it's not a prank show, and it's very much real, which ironically is the prank. Also, okay. I'm getting some comments on YouTube.
Please.
For some alternative Lowe's ventures.
Please. Nick
Crest suggested two great ones. A Lowe's wedding and a Lowe's funeral. Build your own casket.
Wouldn't that be something?
Okay, but like seriously, if you got to choose the wood, like you got the hair or the nails in.
Yes. And then shove Grandma in there and bury her with the shovel you bought.
No. You do it for your gravestone. Like you measure yourself, you build it, then you store it in a locker for 60 years till you die.
Okay. All right, I think we're on to
I'm
something.
not saying it's a good idea, but you can't tell me it's bad.
No, I love it. I love it. But Nick's always one step ahead of the rest. Anybody else have some ideas?
Nothing yet. No, it's nothing like. Honestly, I think they're still trying to, get process the old date night thing.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, and I give Lowe's credit if I can. They're trying. they're desperate, but they're trying. That to me is the entrepreneurial spirit of the American business.
The attempt sucks, but at least it's there.
Wyatt, it's an attempt. So many others just give up, but not Lowe's. They say, maybe what's missing is people come in here to shop and they've overlooked the romance and the romantic vibe that a hardware store puts off that so many people neglect to appreciate. Any kind of contraption, any kind of think about it. There's mood lights. That's romantic. Well, you have that in the lighting section, right? There's
yeah, but unfortunately, we don't have any mood lights for unbridled anger at having date night at Lowe's.
What?
I think that would be a really popular choice for that.
So they would go. They'd bring their date, and they build a birdhouse though, or there's not some new thing.
I don't know any of the details because I basically ran from the room screaming after I saw it.
Right.
But I think it's very similar to the birthdays, where the whole thing is it's just you go in. They basically set up this like group activity to do.
Yeah.
And then they charge you $500 for it.
$500.
Well, the birthdays are $400 with pizza, so I figure the date night would be probably more expensive.
They'll have some food and some champagne.
Oh, $500 base.
Well, listen, you can mock Lowe's all you want, son.
And I intend to.
I just still think it's brilliant that they're trying to do crazy stuff like that. That to me is just taking their dilemma to a new level of American ingenuity. Instead of complaining and crying and wringing their hands, they say maybe, just maybe, we can figure a way out of our financial strappings.
Well, who says those things have to be mutually exclusive?
I know. Well, remember, these are the people that allow you to bring in something without a receipt, no proof that it came from here, clearly 3 to 5 years old. It doesn't even belong from a hardware store, and they'll just give them money back for it. So they don't want to win.
Well, yeah, that's a good business decision because it's really good for people to know which businesses to exploit.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that because I feel sorry for them. I mean, I think Lowe's is a nice hardware store, and, I'm not a big hardware store aficionado, but when I go to one, I like to know that it's got the goods I'm looking for. It has employees that know their stuff, that can walk me through it. And now that I know that you're one of those employees and I know you don't know your stuff, then I realize that really none of them ever have. But they fooled me the whole time. And that's what I love about Lowe's. They've taught their employees the gentle art of faking competence. And that, my friend, that's American ingenuity.
The thing is, about what you're saying, it reminded me of something that I have to remind myself almost every day.
Yeah.
Lowe's isn't a hardware store. It's a home improvement store. Well, half of it's hardware.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not the same thing, apparently.
No. Home improvement store, I think it's a little off-putting that they presume that your house needs improvement. That seems a little insulting, frankly. How do you know that my house isn't pristine? How do you know that my house hasn't reached the level of excellence that you could only dream of? How do you know that my house isn't a place that you should come and take pictures of and put it up as posters in Lowe's and saying, this is what you can have?
We don't know it, but we're all trained to just assume. Yeah. Also, I'm getting a lot more ideas for other Lowe's ventures.
Well?
Let's see. Cabo, I think the name is.
Cabo?
Yeah, it's two words, C-A and then B-O. They've suggested Lowe's cooking classes.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I'm still under the impression we are getting a grocery section at some point, so that's totally on the table.
Well, you already have stoves there.
Yeah, we got stoves, we got grills, we got basically everything.
And refrigerators. And then afterwards, you can wash your apron in the laundry because you have washing machine. So
No, you don't wash it. You return it and then buy a new one.
right, and they'll give you money for it.
Yeah. Let's see. Pottery. Pottery. Okay. That one I'd actually do. I would actually do pottery.
You would?
I love pottery.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see clay turn into clay but halved.
Yes.
I forget the name of that. And then shop class, which I think we actually do.
Shop class. Yeah, well, that would make sense.
Wait, hold on. Is that like workshop class, or is
Well,
that like
shop class was something when I was growing up, son. When I was in school, they had shop class. You literally had a class that they had drill presses and drills, and we actually had, believe it or not, you could make molds, and we would take molten aluminum and pour it in and make molds, and then shine them up and use files and cut it down, and you had band saws, and that was part of going to school, believe it or not, as opposed to simply telling you that you're actually not a girl at all and you need to attach a false genital to yourself to make yourself.
Great job. Okay, so
I didn't make it up. I'm just saying that's what's happening.
I have a confession to make.
Please.
I'm an idiot.
What happened?
Cabo is Karen Boyd.
Aww.
Now, why you chose a completely different username that's, in hindsight, I should have known, but didn't, it's beyond me. So I'd say the blame's like 70% me, 30% you on that one.
Me?
No, Karen.
Oh, yeah. No.
No, you're the hidden 10% to make it 110.
Listen,
because you always give 110%, right?
Karen Boyd is on. I wish I could see it. I always love seeing my people because I'm so humbled that Karen shows up, that Nick shows up, that... did Hackenbush show?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it Quackenbush?
Quackenbush, sure.
Quackenbush is here. Let me think. Paula Faye Marie Rauchi, is she there?
I didn't see her, but I did see... there was someone called Mike Shaw TV. Seems to be new to this, but been commenting a few times. Even suggested that Lowe's is becoming a pawn shop for all these returns.
Nice.
And honestly, yeah, we are.
Stan Stinson, is he there?
Stan
Force Bainey?
I believe I did see Force Bainey in the beginning, yes.
Well, look, guys, I am so grateful that you guys popped over to YouTube. We don't know what happened on Facebook today, but why would we? This is Brad Stine, me, has issues, Wyatt. That's how this game works.
Well, listen, who needs Facebook anyway? We're already up to 99 viewers.
What?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. We got more viewers on YouTube than we had on Facebook?
I didn't even think you had 99 fans on YouTube.
Oh, my goodness gracious. What is... So Facebook tried to do a little end round, little dark web, a little throttle back, little shadow ban, and look what happened. Why, you flipped the script. We're now over at YouTube, and my goodness, they are running rampant. Well, let me tell you something, YouTubers. You need to know this. All you YouTubians, I don't know if you're aware of this, but on August 31st, I am going to have a special release, a actual national release of my original album that launched my career, Put a Helmet On. And we are going to show it in full context, the entire concert, not clipped, just like from the album, for free. And what we're going to get is we're going to get people to try to subscribe. We want people to know what I'm doing. We want to build more of a militia of the mind. We want to get more people that will sign up so we can have our mighty 10,000. We want to see what it looks like to have Americans fight back by being proactive. And so I'm giving you this free concert. I want you guys to show up. It's going to be on August 31st. So I'm hoping, and I'll have to think about this, I don't know if I'm available. I think it's a Friday. I might be. And if so, I want to go on there too because I want to talk to you guys in real time while you're watching it. So tell your friends, share it, because I'm trying to build up subscribers on the YouTube channel so we can make that really robust and make it start paying dividends so I can get more stuff out. Why? I have a new album. I'm trying to get it sort of processed and get it prepared to be shot. And so this is going to help us do that. Now, if you are new, the Militia of the Mind is simply 10,000 Americans, people who identify as Americans. These are not people who are citizens of the United States. Anybody can do that. But an American is someone who believes in the sovereignty of the United States and its borders. They believe in a limited government. They believe the states have their own individual rights. They believe in the First Amendment as sacrosanct. They believe in the Second Amendment to defend the First. They believe that any type of government that becomes despotic should not be part of our system. They believe in free speech and religious liberties as the single most important liberty given to an American because it is your conscience. That means it applies to the atheist as well as the Christian. To be an American means that you are gladly put your hand over your heart and pledge allegiance to the flag only to say, I am an American and I will defend the territory I've been given. You don't worship it. You don't worship the United States, but you're grateful for it. And you stand up against those and those tyrants, and especially in the school academics where Marxism has become advocacy to destroy our nation by recreating our children into Marxist advocates. It is Chinese type of propaganda. It is evil, it is dark, it is real, and no one, and I mean no one, could be more of an expert on this than the guest that we have tonight. And that might be another reason why Facebook was a little hesitant, because the guest we have tonight wrote a book that I want you guys to get, The Marxification of Education. What is it about Paul Freire? This is a guy who is from Brazil, I believe, who was a Marxist, and he wanted to infiltrate the world and through culture, through education. Take education and teach teachers to realize you're not really teachers. You're equal to your students. You're all learn from each other. And to get people interested in their life, where it's going, and then sort of turn that into a sense of saying, how can you as an activist and a Marxist go forth and fight for these ideas? So it is complete activism. He said it would make people more interested in learning this way, but it's completely failed when they tried it, I think, in Uganda, where nobody wanted to learn anything. They just wanted to be activists. It's why school is failing. It's why America is failing. If you saw my truth egg, America's dying. It's not a joke. It's for real. And when I do Truthache, it's like my Anne Frank hiding in an attic and writing my memoirs. The Diary of Anne Frank. She didn't know she wasn't going to survive. She was writing what she saw, and only in retrospect did we find these papers and say, here's what happened to this girl. So I'm leaving a legacy so that if they get me, or the country ends and we're no longer able to be free, or put people like me get to be on air, this will exist in the internet. Somebody will have it, dark web. Somebody will hold onto it and shove it out there. So you'll know that somebody will see that it was predicted. This is what we are. This is what's happened. But it's archived for eternity, because once it's out on the internet, it never dies. So that's what I want you guys to do. Join us. But do me a favor, guys. Listen, you're here every Monday. I don't know why. I don't. But I'm amazed that you guys take time out of your life that I'm sure has a lot of components to it. And you make Monday a time to come watch and be part of this because you care about this country and you think maybe there's something we do here that might help us move forward in healing it. So you are involved. You are activists. I'm sure many of you, I haven't looked at the list yet, have signed up, and you're part of the Mighty 10,000. I guarantee it. And so that's where we're going to be moving soon. And get once I get the T-shirts ready, we're going to be getting this little by little, as you know, because it's just me and Wyatt trying to run the show the best we can. So we're not that great at it, but we will get bigger and better. If you're interested in what I'm doing and you want to donate, you always can. Just simply say a note, where can I donate? I am a ministry 501c3. So if you like what I'm doing and think it deserves to get out there, you can give some money, and it is a tax deductible. But if you sign up for the Mighty 10,000, just go to bradstein.com, and all they'll ask you to do is give you your name, your email, And you'll do a little sign up, and that's it. You're on. You're part of the mighty 10,000. If we get 10,001, that'll be wonderful. If we get 100,001, that'll be wonderful. If we get 1,000,001, that'll be great, great, great. But the mighty 10,000 will only be the first 10,000. Nobody else will ever be able to claim that category. So the guy that I'm about to bring on is somebody that I love. I've listened to this guy many times in many lectures, and you should too. You need to see what he's doing. You need to see his podcast. You need to see his YouTube channel. You need to subscribe. You need to get it. You need to get his books, The Marxification of Education, if you want to learn about what's happening to Academy and why the schools are the way they are. And also Cynical Theories, which really breaks down CRT. You should get that book too. But he has been, I think, on Joe Rogan 2 or 3 times. He's been with Jordan Peterson. He's a heavyweight. And now, for some reason, he chose to be with me. So I'm sure you know who he is if you see him, or you've seen some of his work. And if you're not, buckle up. It's not pretty, but it's important. So, folks, enjoy tonight's special guest interview. God's comic Brad Stine and James Lindsay. Enjoy. So, this is, in fact, God's comic Brad Stine, and I know what you're saying. If you're brand new to the show, how dare you call yourself God's comic? Well, I didn't. The New Yorker did. So when I came on and did a little podcast, because God knows we needed a whole bunch more of them. We just, 10, 100 million isn't enough. I thought I was going to do a simple thing, and that was bring comedy, conservatism, and linguistics, and Christianity and cacophony of clarity. So that's what we're trying to do. A very odd mix, but an important mix in topics based on the Judeo-Christian worldview in the nation that I happen to have been born. And I always try to bring on special guests, people that mean something to me. I either know them or they're saying and doing things that I think are very, very important. I'm looking for people that are smarter than me, wiser than me, and have more depth of the field that they happen to be specialists in. And trust me when I say that's not hard to do. I can go to Taco Bell and find a guy right now that will blow me out of the water. But I've been given this small platform, and so off I go. As a truth teller and as someone whose comedy has always believed that free speech and access to truth at all times is absolutely essential to a free nation. And so because of that, I stumbled upon this guy. And when I say stumbled, I don't mean he was in the gutter, drunk, as most of my guests. He was actually there on a interview with someone, and it was talking about critical race theory. And when I saw that, my ears perked up, because as someone who started comedy and then began to really emphasize political correctness, I started discovering I needed to go a little bit deeper, see what this really is. And when I did, I came across the Frankfurt School, and that's when all hell broke loose, and has continued to break loose for, 70, 80, 90 years. And that's what this guy happens to be an expert in, and then some. But even more importantly, he's got a PhD in mathematics. So now I'm really intimidated because I can't balance my checkbook. But nevertheless, he's here, and he has given me the courtesy to come on with me because something happened to this guy who took his analytical mind and spearheaded it, focused it like a laser on much more critical issue, and that is the culture and what's happening to free people in the West. So I am, trust me when I say, honored that this gentleman would come on with me and spend time with me, because he's been on with the best. So please welcome James Lindsay. How are you, my friend, and thanks for coming on.
Hey, Brad, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, listen, brother, I'm not going to waste your time. We are recording this on Memorial Day. It's a special time. It's a time where men, women, and others of all ilks and ages died, literally, because they believed that freedom was absolutely worth dying for. And I believe we live in a culture that idea that some things are more important than life is fading fast. And so, as I said in my intro, one of the things that just blew me away about what you were doing was how deeply specific and nuanced and just step by step you were exposing critical theory, critical race theory, critical theory in general, political correctness, Frankfurt School, postmodern, everything that is destroying the West. You have just taken to task, and I'm so appreciative. So we're going to go into those things, especially your books, because they've been eye-opening to me and very clear. But let's just get to the hard stuff. Let's start with the bad news. James, as a comic, I believe in free speech, and as a Christian, I believe in truth. And we are watching this get dismantled at a rate faster than maybe has ever happened in history. So let's just start with this simple idea. How bad is it out there in the free world?
Well, it's bad. It's really bad. We're at people are finally starting to believe this. I'll say it this way, is that we are at a pivotal point in history, and the future of liberty hangs in the balance. This is not, merely, hyperbolic rhetoric. It's not even just rhetoric. It is actually the state of affairs. We are undergoing all this craziness that's happening. If you look in history and you look in China in the 1960s, and you look at what Mao Zedong did called the Cultural Revolution, we're having our own cultural revolution being pushed on us. And it is coming in not from a top-down Mao Zedong CCP kind of orientation, although I'm sure they're involved. It's coming through our corporations, which is even more difficult and mysterious.
Yes.
All these things that we've cheered for in American culture and history are actually have been turned into, I want to say, the instruments of our cultural revolution. And that makes it difficult to figure out what's happening, and it makes it difficult to figure out what to do. But it is comprehensible. I think that we have caught the thread of what's going on very quickly, and we've pulled on that thread, and we've gotten much closer to the truth of how this all works than I think our would-be masters are happy about. In fact, they act like they're getting nervous. They say things that make it seem like their ambition is very fragile, kind of not infrequently, but sort of all the time. And so while it is very bad and it is very dangerous, I think there's also a huge amount, not just a tiny kernel, of desperate hope. There's a real reason for genuine hope. We can't sit around and hope it'll go away. That's not hope. Go read Hebrews 11:1. That's not hope. We have to pick up and do our part. But if we do our part, then I think that we can actually turn this thing around. But we must take this very seriously. We're operating under a cartel that has taken control of our entire market, not just a neighborhood in New York or whatever, or Mexico or wherever you want to imagine this happens, but not at your house. It's taken over our entire corporate market. And its goal seems to be to get the West to commit suicide. And so whether cutting off our ability to produce energy, whether cutting off our ability to produce food, whatever these different dimensions are that constantly lower our standard of life, our ability to engage with one another and live and work and cooperate in prosperity, that's what they're attacking. And it's a very serious threat. They're also obviously going after our children with tremendous success through not just the school system, which everybody's kind of aware of. And that's public, private, everything, not just the public schools. Everybody wants to get mad at the government schools. It's far bigger than that. But also through their entertainment. How do kids learn? How do kids get entertained? How do they entertain themselves? Where do parents go? You need that 30 minutes to just like chill out. So you put on something on TV or you get their iPad fired up and there it is. Same stuff, the same brainwashing, the same indoctrination, pulling them in the same directions because the companies that make the programming turn out to be the companies that are caught up in the scam, or some of the many companies that are caught up in the scam.
Well, so you bring up Mao, and I guess we could bring up Soviet Union or former Soviet Union. Certainly, we could bring up Marxism in general because that's the undergirding of all this crazy. But what I find interesting, in Germany is always an easy go-to. Like, why didn't the people of Germany see this coming, or respond in a way that would have been moral and ethical? Why wouldn't they just normally realize I've got to fight back against my government that clearly is doing something evil? And yet, it seems as though cultures are constantly being sort of taken over by these despots, almost as though the people didn't see it coming, or by the time they finally took it seriously, it was too late. Now, clearly, if you have a military state, if you have a North Korea or something where they simply can come in and shoot you, kill you, and there is no repercussions. That's tricky. I mean, we're in the United States. I got guns. So what? I don't got I don't got the stuff the FBI has. I don't have the stuff that the military has. I mean, I have a gun, but I don't have the technology they have. So clearly, if this became a police state, our all rah rah, well, we got our guns and our Second Amendment. Well, it's a lot more difficult than just pretending like you just grab your gun and go shoot, because it isn't that way. You got to mobilize. You got to understand what a militia actually is. How do you defend yourself? Who's in control? Where are we going? What is our objectives? And none of that is happening. So we're not in that position. So I guess what I would say to you first is, and I'm good friends with Eric Metaxas. I'm guessing you're friends, or at least know Eric and his Bonhoeffer book and so forth. So it seems like we're always caught off guard, maybe, or are we just lethargic, or maybe just don't want to believe this is happening around us? But why does this continue to happen, that good people, citizens of a nation that don't believe in what is happening, somehow get bulldozed into this thing, and next thing they know, they're slaves, and they go, what happened? I mean, is there some pattern here that we are reliving here in the United States that we are not stepping up to the plate for and being prepared for, that these other cultures failed to accomplish?
Yeah, I think that history, as the saying goes, rhymes. It doesn't necessarily repeat. The United States is different. We have tasted freedom in a way that no other country in history has. We've become a little bit fat in our ability to enjoy our freedoms, but we also have a keen sense, at least if we're over 30 right now, as to what's at stake, what we're going to lose. So we're in a kind of unique position. So it's hard to say which way history will bounce with this. But what I like to say is that all successful tyrannical revolutions and communist revolutions have one thing in common, and that's that the people that were being put through them figured out what was going on one day too late. Now, I talked about Mao during the Cultural Revolution. The CCP already had power then. They seized power in 1949. The Cultural Revolution started in 1966. So they already had their police state. They already had a lot of tools that our government doesn't have. It's a very different circumstance. It turns out with the Cultural Revolution, people don't understand that it wasn't how Mao took over China. It's how Mao took China back from his CCP competitors that took over for him in 1962 after he screwed up everything with a program he launched in 1958 called the Great Reset. I mean, the Great Leap Forward. I always get those mixed up, historically.
They're the same thing.
Yeah, but that was
Same
so
objective.
catastrophic that they threw Mao out of power. So the Cultural Revolution was actually Mao playing a political stratagem to get other CCP operatives out of the CCP to put himself back in power. So it's a little more complicated, but that's a tangent from where we need to go. These patterns have played out time and time again, and we actually have some resources. People have dedicated much of the last century, gratefully, to studying what happened in Nazi Germany. How did this possibly happen? And Eric Metaxas's book Bonhoeffer is a yet another gem within that long, sprawling study of history. We can see the same, what happened under the Bolsheviks, or what allowed Lenin to take over. We can see the same if we study what happened in the 1946 to 1949 period, the revolution in China, or even all the way back to the early 1920s with how long the CCP infiltrated the Kuomintang. We can look at other countries. Hungary, for example, had a revolution in 1919 that succeeded and then failed, partly because parents became so upset that they stopped going along with it. And as its saying goes, they put sand in the gears so much that the internal strife and external pressures on the Hungarian Soviet Republic crumbled the thing. And they actually resisted communism for a number of years and then eventually got swept up in the Eastern Bloc. So there are all kinds of case histories. But what's going on with people, I mean, there's lots of explanations. We've heard of ordinary men. There's people that are just doing their jobs. They aren't particularly thoughtful about the implications of following orders, and they do them. So you can think maybe about some of these people that are just kind of executing whatever the HR department says in their Cultural Revolution corporation that they're working in. We have other people who are scared because they have, whether it's something to lose or it's just because they don't want trouble, who won't poke up their heads. We have a lot of people who are completely disengaged. They either don't know because they just don't know, or they don't know and they don't want to know. There's kind of even a meme. It's a conservative culture meme where it shows a guy at the grill and it says something, horrific about like drag queens or whatever's going on in the culture war at the top. And then it says, yeah, man, that's crazy. So how was the game last night? And they just don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about normal stuff. This actually has a name. Sometimes it's called normalcy bias. It's a desire to have things feel and be normal. There are lots of reasons, but it is incumbent upon us to realize a couple of things. One is that we do need to stand up. We don't need to stand up crazy. Like you said, the so-called militia route is not a safe bet. It's not going to be an ugly ride. It's going to look more like Afghanistan drawn out over the last 20 years. Not a pretty picture. And so that's not really a great option. But we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have the ability to argue. We still have free speech. We have the ability to organize and make groups. We have the ability to start fighting back and taking back school board positions and state legislatures. We have the ability to have podcasts and put the word out. We have the ability to file lawsuits where those are appropriate. We have the ability to do journalism and dig in to see how this racket is working, which is very rapidly getting exposed now, thanks to Anheuser-Busch having the brilliant strategy of putting Dylan Mulvaney on a beer can, at which point there was a giant boycott, which hit them square between the legs. And there they are, rolling around trying to figure out what to do. Target's saying now that they're having emergency meetings. They said that publicly. We're not divining that. We're not having some back channel communication. We're having emergency meetings to figure out what to do with this. And what they're choosing to do is try to split the middle. And it's a disaster because it's not fooling us who are angry at them for their behavior. And it's certainly not fooling the activists who want to twist the thumb screws as hard as possible. So we see this happening with Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light already. And next it will be Target, is we're going to watch their magic ESG and corporate equality index scores get downgraded as they lose billions of dollars because they've angered their customers, and now they're angering the activists by trying to thread the needle. And what this reveals is, in fact, that we have a extortion racket going on and a protection racket going on in our corporations, run somehow through financial instruments. I just learned earlier today about it. We don't have to get into details, and I can't really. I've just learned about it. But something called sustainability linked loans. So the more that you buy into the program, the more you qualify for what are called sustainability linked loans. And what they do is they give you, if you participate, they give you lower interest rates, better deals, access to longer lines of credit and capital. It's a scam. This is causing, through these instruments, the ability to do monopoly trust activity and racketeering. And when this starts to come into the surface, the demand that something happens, that prosecutions happen, can start coming down the pike. Now, maybe we get them and maybe we don't, but every time something comes up that demands a prosecution that doesn't happen, we delegitimize the circumstances, the regime even more, which creates more and more momentum against them. If you think of it like we have a hurtling train rolling down the tracks, it's going to fly off the cliff. That's us putting the brakes on the train. We're making the train heavy. We're making it drag a heavier, like think about the back cars on the train. You really have a train going down a hill. It's going to fly off the cliff like at the end of the Back to the Future. But somehow we're able to kick the wheels off the back cars. So now they're not rolling, they're dragging. They become a weight. And if we put more and more cars with more and more weight in them, the Hunter Biden laptop, the Twitter files, this new thing that just came out about Bill Gates with Epstein Island, the questions around Epstein itself. Now this CEI, ESG mechanism that's being exposed through the boycotts with Target and Anheuser-Busch and others. It's just like adding more and more deadweight cars that are dragging like a brake. And maybe we keep this thing from rolling off the end of the track. Then we can start to figure out how to fix it and get it going back to the direction it should go, which is away from the cliff. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm hopeful, but a lot of people are asleep. A lot of people don't want to know. A lot of people are scared, and I sympathize, but the more people stand up, the less there is to be scared of. The fewer people, the more there is to be scared of. So I encourage those people to stand up. A lot of people just still don't know what's going on. We're having conversations now that I was dreaming of having 2 years ago, partly because some of the things I was saying and people just couldn't hear it, they couldn't see it, they couldn't believe it, and now they do. And at the same time, we're having conversations now because we have information we didn't have back then. People were starting 2 years ago to wake up to the fact that ESG is somehow relevant to all this. I know I was talking about it, but most people had no clue. Talked to a leader in state politics in Kentucky around 2 years ago, and he said, now what's this ESG thing? I hear that word sometimes, but I have no idea what it is. Heard it once or twice. That's where we were 2 years ago. Now it's on every TV show. It's from the conservative side of the aisle. It's something we talk about every day on social media. So what I'm saying is, if we can start to clarify what's going on. It starts to clarify paths to action. So that's one of the two things. The two things we got to focus on is the fact that we don't need these giant percentages. We don't have to wake up 50% of the population to stop the Nazis or the World Economic Forum, but I repeat myself. We only have to wake up a few percent of the population because they actually have a very small network. It's kind of funny. Every time you go down one of these rabbit holes, you find it's the same names with the same people kind of over and over and over and over again. You'd start digging in and you're like, oh, hey, look, he's there again. Oh, wow. Another thing he's involved in. There's at the top of this thing there where the levers are really getting pulled. Yes, there are a lot of corporations involved. Yes, there are a lot of CEOs participating. And there are probably a lot of CEOs that want their corporations freed from this thing. There are not that many people. We're talking a few tens of thousands kind of in the higher level, and maybe just a few tens of people who really know the operations of this thing, and they keep popping up everywhere. This is surmountable. This is a criminal enterprise. And if we can push to the point where we understand it and thus get people to clamor for its resolution, we might stop this thing.
Well, there's so much that you said, and that I think for my people, the people that I speak to as a performer, as a comic, as a podcast guy, author, whatever I'm doing at the moment, I think the biggest problem, at least those who are somewhat aware or certainly are sensitive to this thing, the angst is from not so much that they see it; it's that we feel powerless.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's common.
It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't mind doing it, but there seems to be nothing to do. And one of the things that I feel simply is making it challenging is we don't even know if we can vote anymore. I mean, if that's what's happening, if we have reached a place where a political party can actually simply decide, we're going to decide who wins certain particular races. I don't know why they do it to everybody, so maybe it's not as easy as it seems. Maybe there's a paranoia here that I'm overreaching. But I believe that Kerry Lake won. I do. I believe Donald Trump won. I think he did. In one way I believe this might be true, James, and you're an analytical guy, so you give me your thoughts on this. We've been berated with this idea that America is systemically racist. Everything they can do to destroy us, the undergirding of who we are, everything that made us valuable, our traditions, the thing that gave us cohesiveness, a community, they're destroying. Well, of course they are. Mm-hmm. You can't rebuild something in your own cancerous image unless you destroy the healthy host first, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I get why they're doing that. But one of the things that is clear to me is that it's not systemically racist. It's systemically narcissistic. These people literally worship themselves, create their own elite hierarchy, position themselves into those positions, never put themselves under the same scrutiny. Bill Gates believes the population should be downsized. And I noticed something about these billionaires. They believe out of their humanity that we need to downgrade the population, depopulate the world, but they never volunteer. You go first. Show me you believe in this thing. Show your humanity, Bill. Off yourself. You've made your money. You've had your yachts. You've eaten your caviar. Why don't you go first and lead the way? But the elites find this interesting slot that they place themselves in. You don't understand this, peasants. We are rich and famous and powerful because we're better than you, because we're godlike, because we are, in fact, the brights, the enlightened ones. They always give themselves these deep, philosophically beautiful terminology because nobody else would give it to them. So I wonder to myself, what has happened to just the ability for Americans to believe in the very fabric and deeply important elements of what made us who we are. The American, everything they turn around is trying to destroy us with altruistic sounds like we're multicultural. No, we're e pluribus unum. Many ethnicities, many options, many cultures, bringing the best of what they had, older generations coming here, but then you become one of us. Then you weave that into the fabric of the American experience, which is why I say on my podcast, we have got to make a clear delineation. We now have citizens of the United States and we have Americans, but they're not the same anymore. A citizen is a parasite who takes the joy and the greatness and the bounty of this nation, utilizes it to their glory, hates America, wants to destroy it, wants it to be gone, believes it's intrinsically evil, but they want to stay here so they can reap its benefits. An American believes that we are a sovereign nation, that the Constitution is sacrosanct, that God gave us our rights, that we are, in fact, have the right to defend ourselves, that we're not racist simply because we want to have the ability to know who comes in and who comes out. So there's a delineation. Didn't used to be that way. There was a continuity, an undergirding of an expectation of what it meant to be an American. And that's been lost. So it appears, and Corona kind of exposed this. Corona did have a couple good sides. It exposed the cowards and exposed the people that live in this nation who didn't get their First Amendment rights stolen. They gave them away without chagrin. You take care of me, you watch over me, I'll wear as many masks as you need, and I'll eject as much as you want, but just keep me safe. In other words, to be crude, we've discovered who the people in this nation are who will say, I know where the Jews are hiding. We now know who those people are, the ones that will turn on us because they want to be safe instead of free. So do you think there's some other, let's just for a second dabble in the World Economic Forum. It appears there is some larger overseer who maybe has had more control over our nation than we've ever known. And that this has always been kind of a game that we've been out of for a long time. Do you think that's kind of a paranoia, a sort of a conspiracy theory? There they go again. Or do you think there's some much, much bigger entity at play here that we have just never seen before?
I mean, I don't think that what you said is a conspiracy theory in any regard. I mean, they're pretty open about the conspiracy that they run, whether it's the World Economic Forum, whether it's their connection to what's called Collegium International, whether it's their connections through the United Nations, which was largely set up by Americans, FDR in particular, who wanted to see this kind of outcome down the pike. There's no reason really to believe, all the pieces that were orchestrated by Kissinger, whether that's with the European aspects of this or whether that's with the Chinese aspects of this, CCP aspects. There's no reason to think that this is a conspiracy theory. They're quite open about the conspiracy. The trail is not that hard to follow for anybody who wants to go look. But I do want to kind of speak into that issue because what you just described, and you invoked the Frankfurt School earlier, and the Frankfurt School had one of its many ideas, but one of its most kind of, I don't know that they really used it as a slogan, so I don't want to misspeak. That's why I'm kind of stumbling here. But they had an idea that was central to their project, which was Aufheben der Kultur. And that's German for abolish the culture. So what they understood was that if you want to, a better translation would actually be transform the culture than abolish. Aufheben is a funny word in German. It means to abolish, but also means to keep, but it also means to lift up to a higher level of understanding. So transform the culture would be a better way to do it. So you abolish the old culture by bringing in elements of a new culture, and then you create a synthetic, fake American culture based around the new idea. And that's what they're actually doing. So this is when we see them taking iconic American brands, whether Bud Light's good beer or not, doesn't matter. They took an iconic American brand and they've ruined it, Aufheben der Kultur. So this is a deliberate strategy. They are deliberately undermining American culture. They're deliberately watering it down. And you've described many of the mechanisms of this. And we can easily draw lines to see who's involved and that these people that we think are a conspiracy are involved. Sustainability linked loans didn't come out of the air. Like, they're actually an instrument that's been talked about openly at the World Economic Forum. A lot of the trans visibility and LGBT visibility initiatives that we've seen in corporations have been major initiatives at the World Economic Forum for the last several years. GLAAD had one of their, GLAAD, whatever that stands for, had their one of their biggest representatives speaking in the last few years, talking about how they're going to build out these corporate instruments to drag visibility issues and all of this stuff to the front as a new initiative. And they've developed these tools. Sustainability linked loans were initiated in 2017. They have all these new tools by which they're doing it. But so this becomes very scary. And this is where you asked the key question. A lot of people look at this and they say, God, it's so big. What can I do? Because if they're Christians, they've certainly not read that story about David and Goliath or something like that, and they forgot that all they have to do is put 5 smooth stones in their pocket and stand up like a man. But if I might be so bold as to say that. But the fact of the matter is, what they have to do is they have to do their part. They have to do their small thing. When you get anxious like that, when you get stressed out and you think, I just got it, it's over. We already lost. It's so big. It's too big. What you're doing is you're trying to reach higher up on the, imagine this thing's dangling from a chain. You're trying to reach a link you can't reach yet. You're trying to reach further than the length of your arm, or if we're going to get really bellicose, you're trying to swing outside the range of your sword, right? What you got to do is focus within your range. You've got to do things within your range. So what do we know? Well, let's say you're just a totally average conservative person. Maybe you're a Christian, maybe you're not, it doesn't actually matter. You probably care about your family. Well, I'll tell you this right now, the Marxists care about your family too. They want to destroy it. So guess what? You better start working to nourish it. You probably care about your kids and also the kids that your kids are around, their friends. Well, guess what? You have an opportunity to talk to those kids. You have an opportunity. Hey, why don't you have, instead of really running around like wild animals or playing on your thing all the time, why don't we have like a thing at the pool on Saturday, once or twice a month, and bring your friends over, and we're going to come out, we'll cook hot dogs, and we're going to talk to you guys and hang out and talk values and do fun stuff, and actually have, some analog friend and family time and start talking about real issues with these kids. You talk about the fabric of America and the difference between a citizen and an American, somebody who understands what it means and somebody who doesn't. Well, there's an organization that I'm proud to be a part of called Moms for Liberty. A lot of people have heard of it because it has 130,000 members now or something like this, some astronomical number. It started just over 2 years ago, not that long ago, with 4 women. 4. Now we're talking 130,000. What did they do? Well, their first meetings were actually these women that decided in Florida, they decided they were going to sit down and they were going to read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and if they get to it, the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers, all these founding documents of our country. And they're going to understand, if they're going to be Moms for Liberty, which they hadn't even thought that was a thing yet, they're going to understand liberty. So they called themselves Liberty Ladies, and they started having what they called Madison meetings. And they started to get together in like a book club and study the founding documents. Tell you right now, Christians are good at getting together, having book clubs or Bible studies or small groups. There's absolutely no reason why they can't set aside time. It doesn't have to be a Bible study. Then you pull out the Declaration. You can do them separate. You can do them together. I don't really care. But there's no reason why people can't sit down and start learning that fabric again and teaching their kids and teaching their kids' friends. Yeah. These are things that everyday people can do. Protect your kids. Learn what matters. Learn what we're defending. Get grounded in that. Be able to talk to people. Tell people about both the big scary thing and how it works, but also, hey, did you know that here's what's going on in our community right now that's taking a stand against this. It's going to change this community, protect this community. You're getting to know your local farmers. You're getting to know your local shopkeepers. You're building back that community that we used to have that built that fabric, and you're sharing these ideas through those networks. It sounds corny, but this awareness raising thing turns out to be really, really big, because the thing that the regime doesn't have and it's losing and that it needs to be able to do this is our trust. So if we understand who we are and we're hard to push around, we understand how they manipulate us and we're hard to push around, and we understand what we're standing for and we're hard to push around, and we understand why we shouldn't trust them, so we don't. So when they come in and say, hey, guess what? We've got this new scam. We say, hey, guess what? Get out of town. We don't want your scam. And it happens again and again. They are stuck in a bad situation. What this does, you know how they always provoke people? They come out and they show up and there's drag queens dancing around. They're not touching anybody. They kind of have clothes on, but they're not actually, they're like, they've got one toe across the line of the law, but not even a whole foot. That's a provocation. They know what they're doing. Yeah. They know exactly what they're doing. Well, when we refuse to go along with their program, we put them in the exact same bind. Either they don't get it because nobody's going along with it, or too few people are. We don't have vaccine passports because too few people went along with this, and eventually it went bust. Or what happens is they have to use force. They have to get more and more and more forceful until finally you end up having, whether it's a federal judge or whether it's, millions of everyday people or some of both, start to recognize that what they're doing is wholly illegitimate. And then the hard questions start getting asked. The new information starts coming out. You brought up the election in Arizona. I don't know that it'll go anywhere, but again, think of the train car analogy. You want to knock the wheels off the back cars and make them heavier and heavier. And I saw this character, he goes by DC Drano, I forgot his real name, just put out a video yesterday I saw on social media going viral where they have video evidence of people tampering with those machines in Maricopa. Whether that particular thing manifests in a big change or not, this is where conservatives tend to get their thinking wrong. They're like, oh, this is it. This is the incident that's going to change everything. Stop thinking that way. Start thinking, this is the thing that just made their train harder to go. One more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And then what is it eventually? It's a straw that breaks the camel's back. It's not some gigantic revelation. It'll be some small thing that turns the whole thing up, and then all of this stuff comes. But if we don't have all of these things building up, making their operation harder, heavier, more complicated, more unwieldy, then they're going to be able to just smooth sail in. Meanwhile, if we're getting based down in our principles, based down in our values, communicating those to our kids, protecting our kids, doing things that are well within our reach, whether that's maybe even running for local office or state office, well within our own personal reach, making sure, helping a campaign for a good person who's running for these. We got to fill these positions with good people. We always say no more rhinos. Well, we got to figure out who the good people are. We got to get them in a campaign. We got to support them. We have to do this. It's going to take work. But if we do this, then what we're doing is slowing down their whole project. And then something like this Maricopa County thing comes out, or something like the new Bill Gates thing that came out a couple of weeks ago comes out, or something like this, corporate equality index thing with Bud Light comes out. And these things make their operation harder and harder and harder to pull off. And that's what we just have to keep doing. So rather than getting overwhelmed, it's stop thinking that you're going to move this gigantic, think of it like a giant brick or something, like huge, like the size of a building. You're not going to push it. You're not going to move it by yourself. It's going to take lots and lots and lots of people working. It's how do you eat an elephant, right? It's the old joke. You're a comic. You know how to eat an elephant, right?
You broke up.
One bite at a time.
You broke up right in the middle of your joke. Say it again.
Oh, sorry. I said you're a comic. You know how to eat an elephant, right? And the answer is one bite at a time.
One bite at a time. Yeah.
That's the old stupid joke. One bite at a time.
Well, but here's the thing.
So if you
James,
think about taking a bite instead of swallowing an elephant, we can do this.
I agree with you. And clearly we got to do something. And if that's the methodology, then so be it. But let's face it. If I'm looking at a election for a governor that they won everything, didn't they win the whole House? The Republicans, they won everything except the governor, so it didn't make sense. I also referenced systemic narcissism culturally of the left, and the reason I know that is because narcissism always they always project onto you what they actually are. It's actually an interesting clue that they give you. Whatever they call you is because that's what they are. If they call you bigots, because they're bigot. If they call you hateful, it's because they're hateful. They can't help it. It's the pathology of the way they're thinking. As a Christian, I believe it's demonic. It's so beyond rationale that it comes from a different place, a dark place. But it's frustrating, James, because when you see video of these guys after there had been a tabulation or whatever technical elements they have to go through to make sure everything's running smoothly, then they came in and broke the seals and did some kind of crazy. I don't know, I'm thinking 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that would have been a slam dunk. Holy crap, indictments. This is sedition. At least, whether I don't know the actual necessarily components for treason, but it's pretty hard one to convict. But sedition, I don't think is quite as difficult. And if you are stealing an election, you are literally destroying the republic. You are literally saying you no longer, as a people, get to rule as the governments who simply vote for people to represent you. That's all this is. And they have destroyed that and have taken over that. So at least we used to be able to say, well, we can vote them out. Well, now even that's up for grabs. You said something, man, you said so much that is so crucial and important. And honestly, I even think of something.
I'll tell you right now, before that, we can sue. It's a very American tool. Yeah. These lawsuits is how does somebody go bankrupt? That's another old one, right? It's an old chestnut. How does somebody go bankrupt? Slowly and then all at once. Yeah. That's how their regime, they got their levers of power. That's how their regime's going to go bankrupt, slowly then all at once. So people get frustrated, and it is frustrating. And I'll tell you, one of their strategies is called demoralization. It is to frustrate you so you give up. So what do you do with elections? Well, let's say that the elections are as corrupt as we're afraid they are. Let's say they're as illegitimate as as our darkest fears. So what do? You show up and you make it harder and harder and harder for them to pull it off. You make it hard for them to do. You do the opposite. They want you to think it's hopeless and not show up, because when the numbers are small, they can fudge them.
Yeah.
If you got the vast majority of registered Republicans to show up, their number juggling game gets a lot harder.
Yeah,
The number of
that's
things
tricky.
they have to pull off gets a lot more difficult. Yeah, and so we have to make their game as hard as possible for them. We have to show up. We have to exercise, even if it's fake. We have to show up and exercise that and make them work for it. They want you. I think, I have a hard time with what I do. This is not fun stuff to read. It's not fun to listen to people that are downtrodden and miserable and dooming out. It's the end of the world. What are we going? It's all over every day. And I think I can't do this anymore. I think this all the time. I can't do this anymore. And then, I mean, literally, I think that I had the whole spell flying home from the conference we were just at thinking that. And I just can't do this anymore. It's not because it was a Christian conference. I had a good time with all the Christians. That's actually the opposite of why. It's heavy stuff, It's really frustrating. And then I remember, they want me to feel this way. They want me to quit. And so the last thing I can do is quit. They want me to be miserable. They want me to be frustrated, because they can take advantage of that misery, that frustration, to push their agenda, to push their systemic narcissism over us. That's what a narcissistic abuser in a relationship does. They want the other person to be beaten down and unwilling to argue and just accept whatever lies, manipulations, whatever they use. What we have to do is, we have to hold our chin up, and we have to say, nope, not today. And you maybe, for me, to me today. I'm not going to feel that way today. I'm going to do what I got to do. And if we get enough people, and it doesn't take a whole lot, that are going to put their shoulder to the rock that way, we will move the mountain. And I am completely convinced it's going to be slow, slow, slow. Looks like nothing's happening. And then bam, all at once. It all goes at once.
Well, and I'm grateful for your optimism, because, boy, it's few and far between in the last number of years. There's an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up, even though it's not off topic, but I think it's an important element for my people who are watching, my fans to watch. Because when I first started watching you, James, and it was in an interview, I think it might have been in Canada or something. It almost felt like you were out on a patio or something, but you were doing some interview with some other gentleman. And I had been studying, I've been doing comedy 30 years. Around the mid-90s, I started taking on political correctness. And at that time, I think we all saw it as sort of this silly trend. We saw it as this sort of funny, simplistic way of seeing things, childlike way of running the world, and embarrassing and fragile and all the things that they, of course, try to pin on us. And I thought to myself, well, if you're kind of known as the comic that talks about these things, you're conservative, you're unapologetic about your faith and political correctness, maybe you should know a little bit about it, just so that you're informed. I don't want to just be sort of myopic, about it, or superficial, let's say, would be a better word. So I started looking into it, and of course, then I come across the Frankfurt School, and when I suddenly discovered we're talking about Antonio Gramsci, and we're talking about deep cultural Marxists, people who truly had a long game that they were willing to put into play in operation and not give up and not quit marching until they won. And they kind of are at the goalpost, frankly. They put in the effort, and they had the courage to stay for what they believed in and get there. And so when I started seeing what it was, I began to sort of sound the alarm. And so, one of my biggest albums is called Put a Helmet On, and that was 20 years ago. And I was really starting to bring up political correctness and how you cannot allow people to lie. You can't allow people to manipulate you. Well, all this material comes out on YouTube and whatnot nowadays, my back catalog, and everybody's like, this guy's great. He's so fun. He's got the pulse of what's happening. And I'm thinking, it makes me mad. I said that 20 years ago. I needed you then to understand and put a halt to this thing. And so here I sit almost like a prophet. So I would gravitate to people. By the way, I wanted to let people see this. I don't have a podcast where people come on and we all wring our hands and we talk about how bad the left is. And can you imagine if a white person had ever said that, and then we all think we were revelatory? No, no, no. We get that. That train's long gone. Obviously, double standards. Obviously, it's manipulated. Obviously, there's racism, bigotry on the other end. That's a given. Give up on that nonsense and stick with what you have. And part of that is being warriors. We talked about the militia. Well, I told people I was going to have I'm going to start a militia of the mind. We're going to outthink these people, outpray these people, outfight these people, and outmobilize these people by getting people like you, experts in their field, to come together as to one, so we can have a mobilized intellectual, as well as whoever's out there in boots on the ground in whatever realm that might mean, to fight. And for my people, I always say, I can't do your work for you. There's no more time for lazy freaking Americans, and certainly no more times for lethargic Christians. Get in or get out. Because Jesus said the same thing. God said the same thing. Get cold, go to hell. At least you stood for something. Or get hot and jump in. You stick in the middle, I puke. That's what God said. So do me a favor, folks. Whoops. For one thing, get this book. This was the first literature I got on you after I began to read about you. It's called Cynical Theories, and it really breaks down cultural Marxism and the whole culture, the whole idea of Marxism in general, but then the cultural Marxism that has spread out and become critical race theory. It's become Black Lives Matter as an undergirding because it's cultural queer theory. All of the idea of critical, if it has critical connected to it, it simply means it criticizes everything. It deconstructs everything. That's all the left can do. They've never built anything in their life. All they can do is destroy, thinking they've accomplished something. And anybody can destroy something. It's easy to break things. It's hard to build things. Anybody can burn a building down. It takes an architect to design one and build it. And the conservative right believe in building. That conservative means we want to conserve wisdom, history, look at what has worked, what hasn't, make an assessment, use logic and reason, hold on to the Greeks as well as Jerusalem, and to see what actually worked, put it into practice, and then fight like men and or women. Now, I set all that up to say how much I appreciate what you do, but here's what was funny to me, and it might sound odd to some of the people watching, but it's important, and I'll tell you why in a second. James, when I listen to you speak, and when I listen to your framework, and I listen to your worldview, and I listen to your when you began to your references and your point of reference as to your perspective, I thought you were a Christian. I said, this guy's one of us. He's one of my people. This man is a Christ follower. He found the one time in human history that God Almighty said, I know you don't believe in me. I'm hard to grasp. How about if I dimensionalize myself? You can see me. Here, I'll do some miracles. You know it's me. I'll die, come back to life. You'll know it's good, that I'm not a cult. Nobody else can pull this off. I'm historically revealed. I'm not Thor. I'm not Zeus. There's never been anything like this. I was prophesied by the Jews, so I'm outside of a linear time. There's never been anything like this in human history. If there is going to be some analytical, logical perspective that finally says, if God's real, how did he reveal himself? There it is, Jesus Christ. And there's never been anything like that. Doesn't mean you have to believe it, but it certainly is unique amongst all the other ideas. And the Bible certainly is a one-of-a-kind book, as Jordan Peterson even respects. And then suddenly I found out James Lindsay he's not a Christian at all. As a matter of fact, he's an atheist. And I thought to myself, it's a double-edged sword. On one side, I was sad, not because you weren't not because you weren't on my team or whatever, however you want to frame it, because I actually believe Christ is God. So I care about your soul, and you're a good man, and I want you to know God so you can be to heaven. That's the spiritual side. That was sort of the bittersweet. But here's the sweet side. But you were using Judeo-Christian or Western language, cultural language. You were using our through line. You were using our history. You were using wisdom. You were using all of the elements of the West that came from the Judeo-Christian aspect, whether you like it or not. And I realized that this beautiful concept works for everybody. And you don't have to have a particular theological or philosophical view to still find the truth. So I still want you on my side, still need you, still want you to believe in Jesus, brother. But thank you for deciding that there was something that you needed to attach to and risk your life and career and future. Because from what I understand, you were a PhD in mathematics. Clearly, you could have probably done something else that would have maybe made you some more money, or at least been a little less dangerous. And something shifted in you to cause you not only to do a deep dive into understanding the background of Marxism and the evil of the left, but to decide to put your life into that as going forward. So what happened? What is your testimony, to use a Christian term, that got you from sort of this analytical left brain guy to a more philosophical, sort of transcendental searcher for truth that has made you a warrior in these culture wars?
Well, I read, it is a very Thomas Sowell kind of answer. I read their stuff. I was aghast. A lot of people know, but not everybody knows. 5 years ago or so, 2017 and 18, I wrote a bunch of fake academic articles,
Yeah.
journals, and gender studies journals, and some critical race and education papers, and got a bunch of them accepted to try to expose that what they're doing is fraudulent. I wasn't trying to be a scholar. I was writing properly hilarious comedy, satire, very Babylon Bee kind of, but academic, fully academic. And we were very successful in exposing. There were two others that did this with me. We were very successful in exposing what's going on. And in the midst of that, though, I read one of the peer reviews of one of our papers that we wrote. And we wrote this paper about education, and we said that we should abuse kids out of their privilege, but we should do it with compassion because it's supposed to be funny, haha. And so they wrote back and said, we like this idea a lot, but we don't think you can use compassion because it'll recenter the needs of the privileged, and you need to focus on what's called the pedagogy of discomfort and all this other stuff. And I sat on this for a couple of weeks and thought about it and talked it over with the very small number of people in my life whom we could talk about our big secret project with. And I decided that this has all the hallmarks at the end of the road of being genocidal. If that's their attitude, the genocide lives at the end of the project. And I started to think about that, and I finally plucked up the courage to ask my wife if I could quit my job and study it full time, figure out what the heck's going on, that I had to jump on the situation. I was ahead of the curve a little bit. I knew a lot about it. We were successfully publishing research in their own field, so I knew something. And I wanted to figure out what it was and tell everybody about it. And she gave me very graciously a runway to try to get something successful enough to pay the bills as we go. And so seeing the truth of where this ends up, seeing that it is open, what drew me in the first place, by the way, was that it denies objective truth. Before this, why was I writing these papers in the first place? But seeing where it goes caused me to commit my entire life to it. That must be avoided at all costs. This is, as you kind of phrased earlier, hell on earth. Frankfurt School unleashes hell on earth. And I was very concerned about that. But what got me in the first place also was the denial of objective truth. I was reading scientific articles that were coming out indicating that the sciences themselves have to be transformed. So I'm an analytical guy. I'm a math guy, background also in physics. I'm seeing these people say, you know, I don't care if people, at the time, I literally didn't care. If these guys want to do their stupid social theory, who cares? The sciences are the sciences. And now they're going after the sciences. And they're openly saying that if the sciences are actually doing science instead of bringing in ideology, then they are, sexist or racist or whatever else. And this is, this is back in 2015 and 16, looking at this. And then opening up the literature to find out that they've been saying this for decades. And I'm like, oh no, so this assault on the idea of the minimally biased, I'll be very generous, but minimally biased search for objective truth was what drew me in the first place. They didn't want to hear my criticisms. When I would criticize it, they say, well, you don't have a degree in it. You're not credentialed to talk about it. You're not one of the elect. I was like, all right, whatever. Let's write a bunch of fake papers, and then we'll prove that we're able to criticize it. Plus, we'll throw a lot of egg on their face. So that's why we were writing the papers. And then one of the papers, the feedback we got from the peer reviewers themselves, from the professionals in the domain, convinced me that if this logic gets unbound, it ends in a genocide. And I don't know that it would. I called it a seed of a genocide at the time. Who knows if the seed is going to land in soil? Who knows if it's going to get watered? Who knows if it's going to sprout, if it's going to grow, if it's going to end up bearing fruit? But I don't want the thing to happen at all. And I think it's already sprouted at this point, and we've got to chop it down before it gets to fruit, because that's a genocide. And so I asked, like I said, I asked my wife if I could dedicate everything in my entire being to fighting this problem. And since I guess it was early 2018 that I committed to the relentless pursuit of understanding and unraveling this monster. I share with you some of that frustration. You know, you're talking 20 years ago, I wasn't that far ahead of the curve. And I've had to wrestle with this for a long time. Like, why? Because everybody says, James, you're too late. And they could say, Brad, you're too late. And you were saying it 20 years ago. Thomas Sowell was saying it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We had guys saying it 50 years ago. You know, Joseph McCarthy was saying this stuff about the infiltration in Hollywood, the infiltration into our government, and nobody could hear it. And this is where one of these places where I like to lean on Christian thought in the Word quite a lot. It's like, why should we doubt God's timing? Right? Maybe people have to be able to see it. Now you read the testaments in the Old Testament, the stories, the prophets. You have these chuckleheads going off, the whole nation of Israel doing something ridiculous until Elijah shows up or whatever and drags them back to the truth. And you can imagine there had to be some people running around being like, why can't you hear me? Why does it have? Because he was the right guy at the right time, saying the right thing, etc. And it wasn't maybe his timing to decide that. And speaking also with that, with his frustration, and I said earlier, they want us to quit, etc. I've read the Bible. A lot of people who aren't Christian have not. A lot of people who are Christian have not. I've read the Bible, and I haven't found anywhere in the Bible where God's instructions to his people are to give up. Just put it down, give up, it'll be fine. There's a lot of, stop trying to manipulate it yourself. This is in my hands, show your faith and renew your faith. But there's not a whole lot of just quit, right? Just give up, let the Egyptians have it, let the Babylonians have it, like whatever. There's not a whole lot of that message. And I think that I look at those things in comparison to this frustration. And I mean, I think that should speak to a lot of people, and like you said, not just Christians. If we put our faith, I mean, for Christians obviously in God first, but for the rest of us in this nation, and for Christians of course too, because they have a huge part in this nation and its history. If we put our faith in this nation and what it was constituted to be in its fundamental ideals, I think we have a pretty good shot of this. I think that we can call ourselves back to that. So that's what keeps me going every day. In addition to knowing it goes bad if we lose.
I guess, well, first off, all truth is God's truth. And so it doesn't matter if an atheist says it or a Christian or a Muslim or a witch. 2 + 2 is 4. Truth is truth. But you're presuming of transcendence. You have to. If there's immutable truth, there's this sort of idea that there's a faith, there's something, there will be justice is what you're presuming. You're presuming there'll be justice. There will be a reckoning day, that there is, you reap what you sow. And so I believe that God has used you at this time because you're a mathematician. You're a hard science guy. And hard science was that science has been settled for quite some time. And so here comes the soft sciences, which can't compete with the analytical absolute that has been proven for thousands of years with mathematics and what it's accomplished. I believe mathematics is the language of God. I believe that's how he speaks to all people, because it's something that goes beyond linguistics. It's something abstract and yet exists and is real and is comports to reality in a way that language sometimes doesn't, because we have to interpret it based on our ethnicities and our historicities and so forth. But mathematics is unique. So he picked you because you thought like an analytical, deductive, or at least inductive reasoned man who looked at things and said, this isn't going to work. I see where this is. A plus B is going to have to equal C. But you had the courage to do that. Well, the truth is, James, not everybody does. They still see something, and the courage that is necessary to believe that this larger ideal that we are standing for, liberty, freedom, so forth, autonomy, agency, is worth a fight. Well, clearly, dude, not everybody wants to fight. They don't care. They'll be a slave. They will give the shackles, wrap them around their own neck, and say, "You lead me, but just keep me safe." And so I just commend you because something about you saw something that was worth a noble, virtuous commitment to something grander than yourself. And I think you're still grappling with whatever that is, and yet you still made that. So I think that's a beautiful aspect of your character. So I commend you on that. As we're getting closer, I so appreciate you being with me. If we can dabble for a couple minutes, because I don't want to miss this, because it was one of what I thought I'd be talking to you the most about. This is the latest book by James, Marxification of Education. I never went to college. I'm an autodidact. Whatever I know is because of reading, and so when I read, I just read, and then you'll see all the underlining and the ideas that I grasp that I sort of then meditate on and try to figure out what it means. There was something about this book that's crucial, because if there's a template for why this is happening to us and what has to cease immediately, is the control of the academia and the education system, because they literally are creating Marxists from our children. And that should outrage people. That should be a cause for righteous indignation, by which we draw a line in the sand that says, you will push no further or it will cost you dearly. For the first time in a long time with the Bud Light thing, I got on my podcast, I said, folks, you got to understand something. If we're ever going to have a shot at realigning this thing and finding true north, we have to finally bury a company. We have to bankrupt them into extinction. No mercy, no forgiveness. Bury you. And so they realize, holy crap, these guys do have more numbers than us, but we never knew how to mobilize. I want to say something that I read in the book that I found interesting. There's so much about this book, it really needs its own episode. It was an interesting quote. It said this: "It is often the pedagogical procession induced by the materials, not the materials themselves, that is the problem." So what was interesting about that to me was this idea of CRT, because one of the things we kept hearing from people is they said this: nobody's teaching CRT in school, you idiots, you right-wing lunatic. Nobody's teaching CRT. And my answer was, that's true. That's true. If you're talking about teaching CRT, the theory, the cancerous lunacy, the racist, bigoted, hateful buffoonery, you're right. Nobody's teaching that. They're doing something worse. They're implementing it. They're using it. They're doing it. That's much worse. Teach CRT all you want, because it's crazy. And we can at least explore it. But one of the things that Paul, am I saying his name like Paul Freire? Oh, crap. Paulo Freire. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. How do you pronounce his last name?
Yeah, Paulo Freire.
Freire. So this guy, this entire book, folks, I don't know if you got a few more minutes, brother. I don't want to keep you, but this entire book really exposes what's happening in academia. If you have a second, a thumbnail about what is really undergirding the crazy that has taken academia off the rails, and we no longer even teach actual education, but really are simply there for one reason: to create minions by which you become a Marxist activist, or you have no value in culture. Can you kind of sum it up in I don't know how you do it, but the undergirding of what is happening in the schools?
Yeah, well, what's happened is the education got stolen from our society and from our children. That's the simplest thing to say. I have it on the cover. It says, Paulo Freire's Critical Marxism and the Theft of Education. The theft of education is really the key aspect of what's going on. And what they managed to do was that they understood that one of the reasons people get educated is to get credentialed. Now, that's not the purpose of getting educated, but they made it the main purpose of education first. So you get a degree so that you can go off and get a good job, right?
no, really, you should get a degree so that you can be educated and then a good job might follow. But they twisted it around. So now the degree is your gateway to a job. And then they've just stolen away the purpose of education. It's not about getting educated anymore. It's about getting credentialed to get a job. And then they changed what the credentials are. So you have to be sustainable. You have to be inclusive. You have to have diversity values, et cetera. And eventually they're moving into what's called competency-based education to actualize that. They haven't fully actualized it. But if you don't have the right degree from the right place or the right markers that say that you're compliant and you have the right values about, say, social justice or whatever else, well, you're going to find it hard to get a job. They've already done this with their corporations. This is why these corporations are acting this way. It's coming to individuals too. But the second thing they did is they stole the mechanism of education. And that's what this book is really about. This is where I said that it's not the materials themselves, but how the materials get used that matters. I'll give you an example. I've given this example a bunch of times. I stole it from somebody else. I give her credit. Her name's Jennifer McWilliams. She's wonderful. She was a teacher in Indiana, and she was going through one of these social emotional learning. That's the thing. One of these teacher training professional development courses. So she's already a teacher. This isn't college. She's off in PD, professional development. You have to do however much every year or whatever to keep your license. So she's doing one of the professional development courses in social emotional learning, and they're covering an example of what you can do to, and she said she can do this to anything now. You can transform anything into a social justice lesson. And here's the example they gave. Like, here's a second grade. This is a real example from a real training. They gave the example of a second grade mathematics word problem. I put this in the book so people can read it for themselves and see it. And they said the example is, so don't freak out, it's a math question and it's a word problem. People get scared, but you're going to realize how easy second grade is compared to you as an adult. But it's, Johnny is riding in the car with his mom and dad on the way to an amusement park. And the amusement park is 50 miles away. They've already traveled 30 miles. How much further do they have to go? And so you can do the subtraction very quickly. You can set it up. You can figure. That's the point of teaching second graders this. Can they take a paragraph, extract the mathematical expression and then equation, solve the equation, and then turn around and express it back in language? Johnny and his mom and dad have 20 miles left to go. Right, so that's the thing. Well, that's not what they're taught in this professional development class to do with that. They say you have to get student engagement up. It's all about engagement. That's why you have to have relevant teaching to engage the students. Culturally relevant teaching, you've probably heard of that. The other CRT. Well, what they do is they say, well, class, who's ever been to an amusement park? So they pick key words out of the word problem that are magical or kids interested in this question. What's an amusement park? Who's ever been to one? And a bunch of second graders raise their hand, and not everybody at 7 years old has been to one of these things, and so not everybody raises their hand. So now you have a stratification in the classroom, and then they make use of that stratification. Oh, well, some of you have and some of you haven't. What do you think are some reasons that some people have gone and other people haven't gone? And the teachers are trained in these teacher training workshops to continue to ask one kid after another, okay, that's a great answer. Some kid says something completely 7 years old and nonsense. Some kid says something else. Finally, some kid says, well, not everybody can afford it. And now you say, oh, wow, that's true. Some people can afford to go and some people can't afford to go. And if there's a racial split to how many people raise their hands, you could go into CRT. If not, you could say, well, what do we do to solve this question or this problem? And then some kid eventually, they're primed to continue asking until some kid says, make it free, make rich people pay for it or something like that. And so then you start encouraging them down the road of socialist activism and socialist thought. But this amusement park, therefore, becomes what is called in Paulo Freire's theory a generative theme, to generate a conversation about socialism or CRT or whatever. Well, you could use mom and dad. Hey, you get to ride in the car with your mom and dad. Do all families have a mom and dad? And you can see where this goes. You have a single mom situation, some kid says, so now you're talking about feminism. You have two moms. My friend has two dads. Do some family, if nobody volunteers it, don't some families have two moms? The teacher could ask, yeah. And now you're having a conversation about sex and sexuality, and you're funneling kids into the groomer club after school that get kind of perked up by it. And they're actually teaching the teachers to transform these word problems and the history lesson and the book and whatever else it is into these kind of conversations. You could say, is it good to ride in your car just to go have fun? Just one family in a car?
don't you think we could ride a bus together? And now you're having a conversation about environmentalism and the whole thing. So whichever one of the domains, whether it's sustainability, inclusion, diversity, equity, CRT, queer theory, feminism, socialism, you have all of these inroads to have a political conversation with the class in the name of engaging them with culturally relevant education, instead of actually teaching them to set up and solve a word problem, which is the mathematics. So the math becomes an excuse to have a political lesson hiding as a math lesson. So if you, as the parent, demanded, I want to see what they're doing in that school, show me your math homework, and the kid pulls out, Johnny is riding in the car with his mom and dad, you're going to look at this and say, okay, fine, okay, great, that's second grade, yeah, math, okay, great, okay, go have fun. And the thing is, they know they're doing this. They know they are setting up these, and like I said, they know that the teachers are being trained to turn anything into one of these lessons. You read a story about a little duck, the next thing you know, you're figuring out like certain keywords and certain sentences, and you turn that into an excuse to talk about politics. And when you talk about politics, what you're actually doing is you're raising a politics that you're bringing up. And that's how they've stolen the mechanism of education. And I wrote this book because I wanted to show parents, frustrated parents, how it happens, how it works. And I think you're exactly right. If we don't understand this, we can't fight back against it. And if we don't get back to education, I'll hold one up too. I have one too. I have one right here also. If we don't get a hold of this and get the reins back on this, then we are in big trouble as a society, whatever else is going on. And the fact is that this is our future that they're messing with. They understand that this is the future. And I call it the theft of education. I use the analogy in the book also that it's like a magic trick. If I was a magician and I held up a thing of cards and I'm like, pick any card you want or whatever, and we do the magic trick, and wow, that's so cool. And then I show you that I actually had the card backwards on the bottom of the deck or whatever the whole time and tricked you. It's not so magical anymore, right? And I take the magic away. But until then, I can do the whole thing, and you're going to throw me $20, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to trick you again, and you're going to give me $20 more. And next thing you know, I'm going to say, is this your card, and hold up the Queen of Hearts, but I've got your wallet in my back pocket or whatever else. So I've robbed you while you're paying attention to the card trick. And they're robbing us of education by doing this look over here magic trick. So the point of the book is to expose the magic trick so that it's not cool anymore. It's not, in Marx's word, it's not mystifying anymore. And when we see through it, we can go after it. Just like if we bankrupted Bud Light and now they're in a bind, we can pull out. It's like I said, it's like we've hit the hammer down on Bud Light, and something popped up, and it's their CEI score. And so what we need to be doing is, instead of whacking, we need to keep the pressure on, obviously, but instead of just whacking and whacking and whacking, we need to go ahead and grab the thing that popped up. We need congressional hearings about CEI scores. We need hearings about this manipulation of education. How is this possible that this is what education is about? And as more and more and more of these things come up, we have to have more and more and more rigorous ways of diving into it, what the lawyers call doing discovery on it. Until finally the scam, the jig is up, and the scammers are getting chased out of town, or ideally going to prison after a fair trial, of course.
Well, I would like to hope so, and that's what I'm saying. I think if there's been any deep angst for me of all that we've gone through, it's this lack of justice. It's the lack that nobody's being indicted. We literally have an FBI that is politicized. I mean, I don't know. It's real. So it's like, wait a minute, you're coming after American citizens. If the Biden administration allows rioting, right, it allows and says that's peaceful protest, but if you do it over here, it's an insurrection. If they have the police force of the United States weaponized, if they have the IRS weaponized, if they have the banks controlled so that they can shut off your funds, if they control the corporations to decide you will behave in a certain manner, or you will not get loans, or you will be given bad a cultural credit by which people will not want to shop you because we will disdain you and put you in social media into position with hopefully bring you down to your knees. I mean, it's literally control over all the dissemination of information and access to equity, if we're going to borrow a real word, for all Americans, which is what's supposed to be happening. That's totalitarian. It is, for all intents and purposes, a totalitarian government, which is what the Second Amendment was created for. Well, nobody wants to grab guns and kill people, but we have to do something. And what's interesting about cultural Marxism. And what I loved about your book was just sort of defining these things, because what's interesting about it, it's scary, but the people need to know this. There is never, this is an endless loop. This is a tautology. This will never end, because no matter what new woke rung they have landed on, it's not enough. We got to go to the next one, because to destroy the hegemony means you become the hegemony. They become self-aware and have to deconstruct themselves to move to the next level. So it can't finish. It is pure anarchy, acting as though it's altruistic and civil. And so I almost have said to people, I hope that 5 years from now, every woman's sport is just guys dressed like women. I want it to happen, because I want people to live in the full weight of the absolute foolish lunacy of your worldview. I want you to live in it. I want you to have to endure it and sit in it. And it will cause people to simply have to come to grips with what it looks like when, in a free country, which you have the right to live in a fantasy if you choose, you do not have the right to force me to live there with you. And that's where we find ourselves. So, brother, I'm going to let you go, because you've been so kind and to give me your time like this. I know you're on a lot bigger podcast than mine, so I do appreciate it. But what you're doing is so important. So I started the interview saying, give me the bad news. You know, how bad is this? So let's go out. It is Memorial Day. It won't, obviously, it's going to air another time, but in memoriam of those who died because they actually believed that this nation was worth dying for, and that the principles of a nation, the only nation ever built on a creed, that all humans were made in the image of God and have access to equal opportunities. In closing it up, give us some hope. So what do the people who are watching today do to say, damn it, I'm in? Give me some marching orders. Let's roll. What would those be?
Well, I would start by saying that hope springs eternal, and there's a special kind of hope for those who keep faith, in this case, in this nation, and what liberty can bring and its blessings. So the hope is, like I said, they confess constantly that they're running a fragile operation. We're making headway against them. We're figuring out the mechanisms by which we're not just saying, oh, here's these bad things that are happening. We're saying, here's how these bad things are happening. And if we keep making their operation more and more difficult to implement, we keep pulling out inconvenient facts, the thing will, like I said, it will fall apart very slowly, then all at once. You say, you know, you're frustrated with the lack of justice. I think most of us are. But what will happen is sooner or later, one of these things is going to come up and it's going to switch the other way, because it's just going to be too obvious. There's just going to be the right judge who sees it, whatever it is. One of these things is going to switch the other way. And then it's going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going to be dominoes. I don't know if you've ever seen that thing where they have the really, really big domino and the little tiny domino, and it's just knock them down. This is how this thing is going to go. And the way that it's encouraged, the way that it's going to happen is by ordinary good Americans doing the next right thing within the range that they can reach. And that means protecting your kids. It might mean homeschooling your kids. A lot of Christians already do that. It might mean getting involved in them and their friends' lives. It might mean restricting access to their devices, or, you know, lots of different practical things that people could do. It means spending a little bit of time listening to podcasts, reading, digging into rabbit holes. I can't tell you the number of just ordinary moms and dads around this country who are now like preeminent researchers into the kind of tangled webs of NGOs and weird nonprofit partners, and how these terrible things are actually occurring in our country, because they decided that they were going to pick up the thread and start pulling on it and see where it goes, and they just didn't stop. And now they are national authorities, bringing to light to state legislators, to state attorneys general, to federal legislators, to people that are working in various different offices and accountability and different nonprofits that are largely on our side, how these mechanisms work. They are the eyes and ears on the ground that are bringing the information to the point where finally the whole thing is not going to be tenable. And research isn't for everybody, but that could be you. Spending time with your kids isn't, I guess, for everybody, but that could be you. So it's figuring out what are your gifts, what are your blessings, and how can you put them into action without losing sight that, if you try to reach something that's beyond your reach, you're just going to get frustrated. But if you reach with what's in your reach, then you can not only become effective, but you can grow your effectiveness. This is kind of the story, the parable of the talents that Jesus tells. Be faithful with the small amount that you're given and double it, and then good for you, wonderful for you, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, I shall make you master over many. By working closer to home and building up your knowledge base, your confidence, your network, your connections, whether it's that you stay active on the local level or you end up being a national level expert in some particular issue, you can and will make a difference. And those differences add up. They add up big. I keep telling people, the Marxists, you mentioned the Frankfurt School was incorporated in the 1920s, 100 years ago. This is a century-long endeavor to take over Western nations. We kind of figured out for sure what was going on with some certainty just in the last debacle. We've caught on quick, and we are catching on quicker. It is an accelerating curve. If you need one last piece of hope, very practical and tangible, look at what they're saying at Davos, these World Economic Forum meetings. They're saying things like, we elites, the good news is that we elites, first of all, they're calling themselves elites, but we trust each other more and more, but the people trust us less and less. That's the bad news. Well, that's really good news, actually. And their last 2 years, they never made it the formal name or the formal agenda, but they made it the informal agenda both years, the last 2 years, that Davos 2022 and 2023 would be regaining trust. They know they've lost our trust. They publish documents that say if even one university doesn't get on board with the program, we risk losing it all. That's a low bar to success for us. I don't think it's quite that low in reality. Might only be 2 or 3, but they're worried about losing even one egg not in their basket, and they lose everything. That gives us a tremendous amount to be hopeful for, because their program requires so much to go right, which means all we really have to do at the end of the day is be good people who are kind of chuckleheads and in the way, and so things go wrong, and then their thing falls apart. They have too much that has to go right, and if they don't get it, it starts to fall apart, and they're too far in now to where once it falls apart that they're going to get off the hook. Right. Which is why they act this way. They cross the Rubicon. They know they cross the Rubicon. They can't admit they're doing something wrong, because then it all starts coming back. So they're going to act this way. Don't let it frustrate you. Just reach within your sphere of influence and do the biggest, best thing you can do every day.
Well, thank you once again for spending time with me, James. Folks, this is James Lindsay. He is a warrior in the militia of the mind, just one of the many pieces of the puzzle, just one of the peasants who's decided that the king is naked. And I'm going to say so. Folks, you can never, ever, ever apologize for truth. If someone says they cannot be criticized, criticize them twice as much. If somebody says that you're not allowed to speak about them 10 times as much. Truth must be spoken from the rooftops. It has to be bold, unapologetic, and you have to be a warrior, and you have to decide if you're willing to die for this. Because you know what? We're taping a Memorial Day. A lot of people died so that I had a long run, and so did you. Free, safe, secure, food in our stomach, roofs over our head. Well, folks, guess what, America? It's your turn. It's your turn. It's time to pass it on to the next generation. It's your turn, and this ain't a game, and it's not hyperbole, and it's not trying to make money, and it's not leveraging conservatism and or Christianity to make some dough with some sort of podcast. It's about realizing where we're at and deciding once and for all, I'm all in. Because, folks, you're only alive that long, you're dead forever. And forever is where you get to decide what God has given you based on what you did here by leaving your legacy. James Lindsay, I know you know Jesus is after you, so brother, one of these days I know you're going to become one of us. But in the meantime, you're a good man, you're a virtuous man, and you are helping us fight the good fight in America. Folks, I'm just God's comic Brad Stine doing the best I can. But one thing for sure is I'm just putting the woke back to sleep. God bless.